are you from?
Okay, I'm Cynthia Hiu Ying Lam. So I'm originally from Hong Kong. My parents and me came to New Zealand when I was 5 years old. We stayed for a couple of years. Then I went back to Hong Kong. And then like 7 years ago, I came back again. So I always consider this
Wow.
to be my second life or my second chance in life, because back then in Hong Kong, I was working in finance. I was doing something I didn't really like. I was in a bad relationship. So when I came here, it was kind of like, okay, I'm just going to pursue my passion, which was I wanted to be a writer. So then I enrolled in a course at university. I started with a graduate diploma, then my master's, and now I'm doing a PhD in creative writing.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's what happened. And then this play is kind of like an accumulation of those 7 years of what I've been pursuing.
So, what do you do? Which you've kind of already explained, but we'll ask anyway.
Yep. So I'm doing my PhD in creative writing. So
Yeah.
hopefully I'll finish in 1 year. I don't want to, drag it out any longer. I've been studying for a long time already. Actually, since my first play, when I was preparing for that, I first debuted this play at the Auckland Fringe Festival just last year. So
Mhm.
during that whole process, I ended up setting my own creative arts company, also called
Oh,
Love Mom
wow.
Creatives. So, because I really like that name, I was
Yeah.
deciding the name for my company with my parents and my brother, and then we came up with all these different names. But I thought, no, I like the name Love Mom Creatives because I look at it and it makes me happy. So my idea is that hopefully with this creative arts company, I want to continue. I want to write books because one thing is I consider myself more as a writer rather than a performer. Okay, that's
Hmm.
first, because I'm actually quite introverted. And the only reason why I felt I had to perform this one woman show, which is about me, my mom, and my two grandmothers, is because it's so personal that when someone asks me, oh, do you want to hire like a professional actress to play you? So then I
Yeah.
thought about it and I thought, you know what? I can't, like, no, because this is so personal to me that I can't have someone else play me and my mom and my two grandmothers. I felt as though, like, at least the first time round, it had to be me.
Can you describe your event to someone who was just walking and knowing nothing? So if someone came
Yeah,
into your audience and, was pulled along by a friend or family member,
yeah.
what would they experience? Like, how would you describe that to them?
I would say it's a really personal story. It's a one-woman show about, a girl, her mom, and her two grandmothers. But it's not just about family history. It's also about, I talk about things like depression and mental health because that's what I've gone through. But it's also about finding one's vocation and finding one's voice. Yeah, I think, like, for example, for me, like, especially when I think of art, it's about expression, right? So it's about, for me, one, the easiest way for me is in my writing. And I realize that sometimes I feel a lot of different things, but I get confused. Like, I'm like, oh, why am I feeling not happy, or why am I feeling a certain way? But I actually don't know how to articulate it. But I realized that through writing is actually when I start to dissect it. It's kind of like through writing, I start to figure out things like, oh, how am I feeling? Like, why am I feeling this way? So it's a way for me to actually help myself to understand my feelings and emotions. Because sometimes I feel as though like it's one big ball, and
Mm.
I can't explain it. And then the other thing is, I think what I realized is actually a way to communicate with others. So it ends up like a dialogue. So I think this one of the surprising things about my play when I did it first in Auckland, because it's the first time I showed something so personal to public. Before it
Mm.
was just writing and maybe my teachers would look at it. That's all. But
Yeah.
that was, I realized that the response I got is that people actually came up to me and they didn't just talk about my play. They said, your play really resonated with me. And these were people from, different ages, different cultures, um, different backgrounds. Like, there were men that came up to me to say parts of my play resonated with them. And I think that's when the dialogue really got started, because then they started to share with me their stories. The other thing is that I think in terms of art, what I realized through my play is that I actually got to explore different modes of expression. Because first of all, like I said, I consider myself a writer, but not a performer. So as a performer, I really had to get into my body. So my play also incorporates Chinese martial arts, some Tai Chi, and my mom sings in the play. So she actually helped out with the play. She sings.
That's
So it
so
was very
cool.
moving. Yeah, I try to sing with her, but I sing out of tune, but she's a great singer. So she's so there was this whole aspect of combining not just writing, which I usually, I use my head, but I use a lot of feelings, but it's also became more like a bodily, visceral experience for me as well.
And the last question I have is, what does Dunedin Fringe mean to you?
Well, first of all, the Fringe Festival, I think as a new artist was a great platform for
Mm,
someone like me because, especially I think my first one at Auckland Fringe, sometimes I apply to venues and, they won't accept me because maybe they don't know me, they don't know my work, I don't have a track record. So I really like the fact that, first of all, the Fringe is open access.
mm,
It's a place for people to experiment and for new artists especially to have a chance to showcase their work. And I think, and Auckland and also in Dunedin especially, I got so much support from you guys and your team, and that was amazing. And I think the special thing about Dunedin is that I've never been to Dunedin, so this is kind of like my first show, like touring, so to speak. So yeah, it's been really
exciting.
special. Yeah, so I felt a really good community vibe, whether it's from the team, like, people who I've spoken to,